Southland. We are live streaming, so people can watch and listen to our work processes. My first job is to ask for any apologies. I note that Councillor Guyton isn't here.
We'll have to put an apology in for it.
Yeah, I'll move.
Moved and seconded. Everyone in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest in relation to matters which are before the committee today? Additional declarations of interest. Public forums and deputations. Don't see any. No. Confirmation of the minutes of the 24th of February. Someone who was present like to move? Councillor McPhail.
I'm happy to second.
Gibson, yes. There's no discussion. There's a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting. If there's no discussion, to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Extraordinary and urgent business. I have no notifications of extraordinary and urgent business. No late papers. No questions. Some questions. I just repeat what I've said once before, that if you do have questions, it's really useful for both myself and the staff to know in advance what the questions are likely to be, so that we can prepare to have answers rather than going out and saying, well, we'll come back to you later. The Chairman and Councillors' reports. Are there any reports? I don't have one in relation to the matters before the committee. Running through biosecurity regulatory report by Polly Willing.
Through you, Chair, just before we move to the bio report, I just would like to introduce a bit of a change in executive leadership for this committee, if I may. So the executive has been looking as part of the organisational redesign to ensure that we have an even spread, if you will, in terms of our support for various committees the council holds. And I'm delighted to say that a face very familiar to you all, Bruce Halligan, who's our strategic regulatory advisor. He will be your executive representative supporting and leading into this committee, which is why he's sitting next to Councillor Cook right now. So thank you so much for kindly agreeing to this delightful honour.
Welcome, Bruce. I think Bruce is used to us.
And he turned up anyway.
Thank you. So, Polly. Biosecurity Regulatory Committee report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, take the report as read and submit it to be accepted. Has any questions?
Do we have commentary or questions? Polly has asked that it be taken as read. I've got one question. Just who did we partner with on the trip to Fiordland? Their joint agency trip was completed in January.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think you all know Catherine McLaughlin, who's a team leader in the
Thanks, Catherine.
University team, but she can respond to that. She was part of the trip.
Thank you. So the January trip in Milford Sound, that's a Environment Southland only trip. So we partnered with our maritime team, so Lyndon Hubmaster and his team, to do that work. But the other trip mentioned in there in January, which is all of Fiordland, is using the dock vessel Sun and Wind. So we partner with Department of Conservation, Ministry for Primary Industries, both the Biosecurity New Zealand and Fisheries, and the dock staff as well, who do kind of track monitoring and that sort of thing on those trips.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just related to that, it's been sort of an ongoing discussion point with some of the key stakeholders in the area about the level of Environment Southland presence in the Fiordland area. It's obviously a massive area to try and cover, and we don't have anybody directly posted in that immediate environment. So we're looking to do as much interagency work as we can to sort of maximise the collective presence in that part of the region. So Catherine and Ollie and the team have done some really good work on a compliance strategy that looks to work with the other agencies and sort of maximise the eyes that we've got in that area. It's a huge patch to cover, and trying to maximise the collective power of the organisations is really important.
Thanks, Bruce. I do think, my own opinion is we need to have a greater presence over there. We should have our own boat. I have said that before. Councillor McDonald. Yes, well, it would just about be justified by the amount of work that's involved over there. The more continuous presence.
Yeah, no, look, the thing about it is it's such an important role for the council, isn't it? And a lot of the work is collaborative, so it's really positive. And I've always said through the other committee, the regional services, why can't we find a way of talking about the work through biosecurity we do in Fiordland? Fantastic canvas over there, isn't it? We do a bit, but we really need to find a way to push it out there, because constantly we as councillors, you're spending too much money, where you're going to make the cuts. And I talk to people about biosecurity, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, not here." So we need to talk about ourselves, and that's a challenge for this council in a more positive way. But on to my question, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. A while back, there was a discussion, I think it was led by Councillor Gibson here, on Walding Pines and a potential workshop to get to understand. And I'm just wondering, is that in the pipeline? I think we've spoken about it a couple of times, and it's come through the regional services too, about a workshop for the councils. We've got a quickly emerging threat up in northern south and around Douglas Ferry, Walding from plantations. So an update for that would be quite good. Yeah, so that was you.
That was where that all started.
Yeah.
To answer that, there is a workshop scheduled with councillors for June for that, and noting that it is also an agenda item on Friday at the Great South working on. And I know a number of staff have attended to various workshops and discussions across the strategy and regulatory division, including Bruce, but also in integrated catchment management. So Lucy, last week, I believe, she was at a day-long workshop. So pulling together a lot of strands, the evidence, to shape up into strategic direction, which we'll workshop with you in June.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you, Councillor McPhail.
Just a couple of quick questions, and it was actually answered, but I'd like to tease it out a bit longer. Have you ever scoped out what it would cost to base someone over there? I think it's only going to, you know, from what we'd sort of indicated, you know, if there's more, and I'm just looking at the CBP compliance and things like that. I'm just actually going to ask the question: what do we do with those people? Are they getting fined? Are they, you know, are we just educating or in regards to that? But unless we, as a governance or budget, it's always a bit scary bringing extra cost to us to try and justify and things like that. But it is a hugely important area to South, and I get a feeling, you know, it's not going to get any less important, so to speak. So I'd actually challenge the thing to actually, you know, the numbers might be big, but if we don't know what the numbers are, then we can't even make a call on it. So, so it's a couple of questions.
Through you, Chair, I can answer the question around the scoping work to have somebody based in close proximity to Fiordland. My understanding is that a few GM iterations ago, there was actually an initiative which was started to look at that, but that is something that obviously we're in business planning phase at the moment, that we can pick up again. Council wishes to look at what the cost is, but importantly, what the outcomes would be, and what we would see those outcomes, along with the practicalities of what that would look like from an operational perspective and a management perspective.
Can I just say I have not only lightly progressed an idea we should have a bigger vessel. I've got a lot of knowledge about what it would be like over there, and you're talking millions, probably to get a vessel, to maintain it, to staff it. The continuous operation of a vessel in a place like that is very expensive. I still think it is worth considering. I think in terms of what happens to people that will be checked, there's some further papers here which deal with that.
Mr. Chairman,
I would also note that a collaborative approach we take with other agencies that do have very strong presences across Fiordland as well. So that is the current approach in order to, I guess, make our presence go further.
That's the pragmatic approach. But other organisations are having their funding reduced or restricted. Yes, so I've got Alistair.
Yeah, Jeremy took part of my question, but can we get a time when you might come back to us with something on that basis of what it might cost us, how we might do it, because there's more ways than one to make it work.
I wouldn't want to commit through you, Chair, to a time just yet because I'd need to scope what is involved in undertaking that work. I'd want to look at what data we collected when we started looking at that question last time and updating it. I wouldn't have thought, though, as an estimate, that it would take more than a couple of months. But I'm happy to come back and circulate a more firm date when I understand precisely what is involved.
I was going to suggest before 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
But it's likely to look like that.
Okay, thank you.
So Chairman Horrell.
Yes, just on this matter, we probably should be looking outside the square a little bit with the satellite imagery, GPS, etc. Maybe we have every boat that goes in there, we should have a transponder on it, so we know exactly where they are. That would actually make surveillance a lot easier. It's a massive area even to have a boat sitting there in the cost. The technology is there now that with the satellite station down here that GPS is within centimetres. So we've got a lot more technology than we've ever had. And it wouldn't be hard with clean vessel is one thing, but actually if you're going into that area, maybe people should have to have something so we know where they are. And it would actually probably help people do the right thing for a start, because it's not as if we can just sneak around the corner and nobody will know we're here. So I think, technology is there now that it's not just having boats on the ground. There are other things we could consider, and that would be interesting. And it'd be great to hear any progress we're making on getting that fallout facility at Bluff, because we know that is key to stopping the spread of things. But just having the ability to know where people is, we've talked about, even at Milford, perhaps having a camera on the wharf so you know who's out there. They're reasonably simple technologies, but at least that probably encourages people to be a lot more responsible too.
I think most commercial vessels have got a vehicle identification system, which is supposed to be operating all the time on the water, isn't it?
through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly the technology aspect. The second part of it is probably the legislative component of it, because we have to be within our legislative powers to require something like that. From scoping around, could you impose that type of condition as a condition of resource consent on a commercial surface water activity, for example? The technology is certainly there. We'd certainly need to do some more investigation into the legality aspects of it.
Thank you. Councillor Rodway.
I'm not opposed to the investigation of some of these issues, including having our own boat, so to speak, and what Chairman Horrell's talking about. But I do think part of that investigation, and I'm sure it would, look at the benefits of the way that it's working at the moment with the other agencies like MPI and DOC, and working, it saves them money as well as saving us money. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but it seems to me that that collaboration is highly valuable and shouldn't be, because if you have your own, then I just think it's bound to be far more expensive than the way we're doing it at the moment. Not to say that there may be improvements, as Nicol says, but I imagine doing an investigation of this kind would take quite a bit of time and resource, maybe have to be sent out to external consultant, and so there's a fair bit of cost in just assessing all the options. I think we just need to think about that a bit more maybe before we ask the staff to go down that track.
I just advise you that the vessel that we've been using is due for replacement. So that I believe it's timely for us to be considering the future. The organisation is operating at a signal that it's due for replacement. We can take advantage.
I don't know. I didn't know about that, Mr. Chairman.
No, I didn't tell you everything.
Yeah.
No, it seems to me that the fates have brought us to a point where it is actually timely to have some estimate or consideration of the future of their presence in Fiordland. What we've been using now may not be available in the near future. Have I missed anybody?
Well, are we asking the staff to do something or what?
Yes, we are.
There was an offer, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yes. Can we record that we have an offer from staff to investigate the future of their presence in Fiordland and
And a high
give us some
level.
idea of the costings and the administration?
We had that recommendation, it's just an action.
All right. You want to make that a recommendation, an action point?
I'm happy to move that. I'm happy to move, receive the
So we
report
ask
and.
staff to prepare a paper without a time frame on it at the moment.
Well, we've got 2 months, we've got 60 days.
Fairness, picking up on Councillor Rodway's point, we'd probably look to build on the existing compliance strategy as part of that. There's a lot of good stuff that's happening across agency, which at the moment is probably maximising the bang for the buck, if you like, from the collective agency. So if we were intending to do something further than that, we certainly wouldn't want to erode that current collaborative approach, which is working pretty effectively, really, and they've got some good interagency relationships.
An option is that all the agencies work together now, might get together to fund an appropriate vessel rather than one agency only having.
Immediately after this, I've got a meeting down at NPI where it's basically the Fiordland Marine Guardians Lead Compliance Subcommittee, so we do it at least once a year, so we're meeting to talk about next season.
Okay.
And about effectively using Sunderland and how we can get it work together, so it's possibly a good starting point.
I support that discussion and investigation, but also I go back to that communications part of it for this council to demonstrate how well that money is used and how well our resources is used in such a difficult area of the country. And even that could be a joint discussion you have with those other agencies where we collaborate, because they will be looking for some sort of promotion, one would think too, for their activities. I think, with Sam now in the general manager role and team there to do that. I just want to promote our activities.
So Councillor McPhail has put a recommendation of there that we ask the staff to consider our future presence in the Fiordland area.
We can see with the report, I'll second that of this.
Okay. Do we need to say more than that, Jeremy?
No, sort of.
Asking the staff to prepare a report.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seconded by Chairman Holt. Any further discussion? So, there's 2 recommendations. One, that we resolve to receive the report. Second one is that we ask the staff to prepare the report for our future presence over in Fiordland. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone against? Thank you. Thanks, Polly. So, consents division report. Tracy. Lucy. Lacey, sorry, wait a minute.
Pick one.
I did know that.
I will take the reporter's read that with updates. Okay. A couple of updates on some of the timing of the included content, given it was quite a while ago since it was written. I think I will leave the fast track piece to the fast track report. That's right. Align and make more sense. The report details that we are waiting on a date for the Fiordland Charters Limited mediation. That date has been set by the court, so the mediation date is down for next Wednesday. Just as an update to that. There is, you'll see in the report that the discharge consent for the aluminium smelter has been processed and granted. The consent itself was granted for a 5-year term to allow the essentially ongoing discharge, passive discharge from the landfill to continue to occur in the meantime, whilst a consent was also granted to allow some waste removal from the site. There are plans in place for the reprocessing and recycling of material at the site. We have been already engaging with New Zealand Aluminium Smelter staff around the long-term planning aspects of what will come next. So it has come quite soon. 5 years is a very long time. So that is underway, and we hope to hear more about that from them in due course. The Ngāi Secrets application, you'll see, has been rescheduled to hear the judicial review and appeal on the decline of the EPA decision on the previous fast track process out to October 2025. You'll be aware that they are a listed project in the new Fast Track Approvals Act as well, so those two things may coincide. We are engaging with them as the process continues. What else we got? The Waituna application, further information has been circulated from the applicant to all parties following the pre-hearing meeting as discussed and agreed at that meeting, and the next steps are moving toward a hearing date. A potential hearing date has been circulated to parties as early as yesterday, and whilst we acknowledge that there's probably no further date into which any hearing could occur, a lot of thinking and range of factors have been traversed in order to seek to come up with a certain date. So things such as the expert availability, decision-making ability, the ability to be flexible and use remote resources in order for appearances to occur, the lead-in time that will allow hopefully the doubling of timeframes in order for people to be able to absorb the information that is circulated as the application heads to a hearing, will hopefully they'll be able to work with that a bit better than if it was the normal 5-day turnaround. There is an acknowledgement there that it is a very busy time of year, as it will be a busy time of year for a portion of our submitters, but also if the dates are set down for the end of August, then it is a busy time of year for council as well. Totally acknowledge that. So yeah, we'll be doing everything we can to enable everyone to participate and input as we can. We are set to send out an update to the steering group for the water conservation order. That update is around the finalisation of the science setting of numbers made possible by the reductions from the community. It is really, 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 can't stress that enough, important that that information is packaged up, it will set the way forward and help the people after us continue to understand how the numbers were put together. And so watertight, excuse the pun, but it needs to be as perfect as we can get it. And that information will support the replacement applications that are needing to be formally processed and decided by a decision maker. So largely the update so far.
Mr Chairman, just before we move to questions, just also like to highlight the bottom of page 19 on your agenda, the fact that the consents team has been 100% compliant timeframe was in the last quarter, which has been a recurring theme, and just want to sort of thank Lacey, and if you don't know Melanie Wilson, Mel's the team leader in the consents team sitting in the back of the room. Lacey and Mel and the team are doing a lot of good work in keeping these processes moving for our customers, and had some good feedback on that. And in the last quarter, there's been some technically quite complex applications to deal with, so it's been good to see those move through the system, such as the NZAS one that Lacey spoke about. Second part of that is to our water conservation order work. There's a large body of work done in 2023, 2024, in particular to recalibrate the consenting allocation regime to fit within the water conservation order parameters. In principle, there's been agreement reached, so it's important that we keep that moving to effectively embed that agreement into a new suite of consents for all those consent holders. So Lacey and the team are quite focused on keeping that moving.
Okay. So Jeremy, questions?
Yes. We've answered my questions on the Mataura conservation order, but you're indicating that by June, mid-year, that you'd have that all tidied up. Is that
Yes.
timelines?
Their timelines. So the packaging of the information is just it is one component. That then needs to, so we have a range of replacement applications that are in train, and some of them are at varying stages, whether that's to do with, some further information, not about the numbers. And then obviously there's the reviews. So the reviews, as they stand, will be able to move as one cohort of decisions. The replacement applications, once that science is sorted, they will, hopefully we can get a large volume of them through in one go. But yeah, depending on how the rest of the application needs to be processed, with individual applicants, just may need some, there has been some changes in legislation, there has been some changes on farm, it has been quite some time where tweaks need to be accounted for.
Okay. Just thinking back, I think it was 2019, was it? $300,000 you need to sort this problem out. 6 years in, and I'd love to see it. I just don't want to see the number that goes with it, to be honest. So it'd be nice to sort of put that to bed, so to speak. Another quick question in around the consents. There is a bit of talk about the dairy conversions in other regions. 50 in Canterbury and maybe 18 Otago. Just asking the question, has there been inquiry in regards to converting land to dairy?
Through your chair, we have had inquiries around how the framework now works, given the revocation of the temporary intensification standards from the NES. So those standards were introduced in 2020 and were an interim step to allow regional councils to update their plans to align whoever that was put on hold from the government. So some people have been left in a space where, some regional councils, have been left in a space where they are falling to their own rule framework. And I have to say that our framework is a little bit more up to date perhaps than some other regions, with coming out of court, quite recently. We have had some inquiries. There are a lot of people who are inquiring about making changes to farm activities, not necessarily converting land, like from non-dairy to dairy, but there is some interest out there about making changes on farm, which all falls under the same framework. Yeah.
Chairman Hall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one of the questions was about the Mataura. It sounds like that's reasonably under control. So I'm assuming that the Wilkins consent's obviously gone through, and that's taken the last impediment out to actually allocating the water across that catchment. It'll be great. It's been a long time coming. And just on the, I think we probably need to do a wee bit of work on the Waituna consent. I understand that the timing is because of the availability of commissioners, but it will not go down well if it's during calving. And it's great to hear that you're saying there'll be flexibility to try and put people in at times of the day that will allow natural justice to actually occur. But I'm sure there'll be a little bit of angst out there. So I think we just need to manage that process, that it's not deliberate, it's actually just you've got to have people in place and the science in place to do it. What else did I have there? There was, well, just on the land use change thing, there does appear to be a bit of inquiry at the moment about properties being planted substantially in trees and the ability to actually intensify the high productive land if they can, and basically if we can prove that it's having less effect than the status quo, are we open to it? So obviously those are discussions, that inquiries that you're dealing with.
Thank you, Nicole. Alistair.
Councillor McPhail took my questions. I'll talk to him later.
Yeah, we chatted about that. Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Nicole just said about the timing of the 31st, is it?
Roughly, but potentially floated as the last week, so.
Yeah, you might want to talk to Councillor Pemberton too, because he's a dairy farmer. I don't know what goes on, but he says it's right in the heaviest part of calving. So it might be good. There might be an opportunity in the middle of the day to hear the residents or something. Talk to John anyway. John's an alternate, I think, on the alternate committee. Is that correct? I think he's.
And that's the trust where this is
The trust.
this is quite separate. This is a joint application by 3 parties to resolve the opening regime.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, slightly related to Waituna, you might recall there was a pre-hearing meeting on the application on the 7th of March, which was well attended. It was held in the chambers here. We had an independent chair for that, who did a really good job. The submitters raised a number of strong concerns, both in their written submissions and on the day. Subsequent to that, the co-applicants have revised a suite of consent conditions and some other supporting information and sent that out this week to the submitters. There's some reasonably significant changes in that in terms of the nature of the conditions and the operating regime. And it also seeks to clarify what will happen in instances where the lagoon needs to be opened. There's sort of a number of triggers for that, not just heavy rainfall or something like that. There's a level trigger for when the lagoon reaches a certain height. There's also other ecological instances like we had last year, for example, when it was open not because it was too high, but because there was ecological conditions that represented a significant threat to the lagoon. So there's been some clarification around that. There was some concerns from submitters, understandably so, that the 3 combined agencies would, for want of a better word, dither around too much and sort of fiddle while run burns as things deteriorated. And that was an understandable concern. So there's been a decision-making tree put together to make it clear how things will operate, and so things can move to a decision to open quite quickly.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you for that. Are there any more questions? If not, somebody like to move the recommendation and add to that our congratulations to the consent team for processing the applications 100% of the time.
I'll move that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right. I'll second that by Alistair. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Thank you. We move to the group work program update from Donna.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Through you, I will table the report and take it as read, and just note that there's been no updates or changes to that report since it was last presented at the last meeting.
Through you, Chair, if I may also add, as we've had some substantial changes as a result of our now implemented organisational redesign, we will be doing some work with respect to how this report is presented so that it is fit for purpose and providing you with the information that you need as well.
Do we have any commentary or questions? No, Donna?
I'm just going to say no change in front facing staff. You still with us, Donna?
Still here. I'm not letting you go anywhere through the chair.
I move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded by Jeremy. Councillor Mowbray, Jeremy McPhail. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, thank you, Donna. And we have Donna back again for the compliance division update.
So I will take the report as read and just open up for questions today, if that's okay.
So I assured Councillor McPhail a few minutes ago that we had a report somewhere here about our work over in Fiordland and what we dealt with in terms of finding vessels without clean vessel passes. I can't find it now. Where is it in this one?
No.
No, that's
I'm
what I was
sorry,
going with,
Jeremy.
But I saw this coming.
I knew I'd read it and I couldn't find it.
I can ask that question. Just in regards, what do we do when they haven't got a clean vessel pass? Do they get a fine? Do they, for education at the stage? Or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that process is managed by a biosecurity team. So I can get you to clarify and come back to you what that process is.
So just to add to that slightly, the approach that they take is not dissimilar to the approach that Don and the team take around, education first type approach. But you might recall about 3 years ago we had a serious non-compliance with a vessel that constituted quite a significant biosecurity risk in Fiordland, and there was a prosecution undertaken, and that person was convicted. So it's not a preferred modus operandi, but there's that opportunity to take that firm action if and as required, and as I'm sure the consequences of a major biosecurity incursion in Fiordland can be extremely dire. So as has been mentioned earlier in the meeting, that's where education first and getting the message out there to people is really, really important. But there are some consequences for either recidivist offenders and or really serious non-compliance.
So I apologise. I
No,
you were straight out. I knew I'd read it.
back down. I said,
I couldn't
know where
find
he
it.
is.
So Morris, you
Oh, yes. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask about gravel monitoring. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, Hayley, and you explained how there were 3 categories of risk. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about this because these are very large amounts of gravel. Even at 25,000 square cubic metres is a lot of gravel from one site. And I wanted to know, how did you come about setting these categories? What advice did you get from the likes of Ian Fuller, the river geomorphologist that we've been using? And what kind of monitoring do you do when you go to these places? Do you do, for example, cross sections to ensure that the riverbed isn't being degraded too much? How do you know that, as I say, even this 25,000 cubic metres is not damaging the river profile, causing instability or any other adverse effects?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in this initial draft of our risk-based approach towards gravel monitoring has been developed across the lifespan of a consent. So that 25,000 is across the lifespan of the consent, not in any one activity. And it's just a first draft. All of our risk-based processes start with a first draft, and we seek further support and information from there. We haven't yet spoken to Mr. Fuller. So we've just been using in-house resources at this stage to get to where we're at now. And this is around the impact of the activity on that site, which is why those bans have been made as they are.
So is there is there a way of determining whether or not taking this amount of gravel out from a particular site is sustainable?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those are the conversations we're having currently with in-house resources to make sure that we're banding it to start with. So this will be, if this was the example that rolled out in year one, it's all of our risk-based approaches are reviewed annually. So it would be reviewed to see the success of it, how it landed with their customers, councillors' feedback, executive feedback, and then it could be reviewed and changed and moved forward, and obviously communicated to the consent holders at the time.
Sorry, I didn't quite get whether or not you said this was assessing long-term sustainability of the gravel at that site or not.
No, so we are only looking when we monitor the conditions on the consent. That's what we're there to monitor.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're not causing degradation in the riverbed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, might be able to help a little bit with that. You know, the broader issue about where gravel may be accumulating or more nourishment is needed of gravel resource. You'll be aware there's been some bathymetric surveys undertaken in some of their catchments, which is more of like a macro level focus. As Don has indicated, when our compliance team are in the field, they're really assessing an individual consent as to whether they're compliant with the conditions that were imposed at that time, and not necessarily looking at the broader movement of gravel within the catchment. We've probably got some work to do in that space, but you know, Donna and the team have recently taken over this function and getting up to speed with it and doing a really good job. But I think the macro level picture of each catchment and what's accumulating or degrading and where the deficits and surpluses may be is something we've got a bit of work to do on.
So that wouldn't be part of this though, that would be something separate, is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that separate work would be used to then inform our approach to the compliance monitoring, but we've got some further work to do in that space.
Sorry to be too persistent, but is that something that definitely will happening, is happening? And
I'm aware that it has happened, the bathymetric work's been done with respect to the Matara. I'm not sure where the other catchments are at. We need to liaise with our catchment operations team on that, but we could certainly bring you back an update if you'd like one.
Yes, that would be good, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think you've highlighted the complicated business of gravel management monitoring. Peter.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was here early this morning for the mucking talk. Didn't make it first thing, did I?
No, you did not.
But I was there for the important part where there was a council that talked about the bylaw and bailage in the floodplain. Are we over this at all? And I know the catchment group come in and talk about it, but we're talking about compliance really at the end of the day, aren't we? So is it something that you keep track on? Do you have to go and have a wee tour around and have a look?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at the moment the bylaw is actually managed and monitored and enforced through the catchment operations team. If we notice anything while we're out on winter grazing incidents where we see bales inside a floodplain, that is reported to them and they follow up on those instances. It's the same as if they're out and about and they see anything that they would have a chat to the farmer and have a chat about where the bales are. So it is something we're very cognizant of during winter grazing.
Yeah. Is it a function that should have been brought over with the monitoring, the consent monitoring with the gravel too, from the catchment team to the compliance? Is that, I'm just stirring the pot here a bit, but it seems as though that could have been brought over too. Because we have a law there, and I'm not saying about the catchment team's not doing a job, they've got a heck of a lot on, you know, everybody has, but if there is significant amounts, like that councillor said at the meeting, in the floodplain, it's got to be a real worry for this council. We saw last time in the 2020 floods, it was a significant issue that was widely reported through media, wasn't it? So,
through you, Chair, it's such a great idea. We've included it in our organisational design. So as the structure was stood up last Monday, that function has moved across resource management. However, there's work programs in flight, and so that takes time to implement. So we have a work program that Donna's leading at the moment, but it's an integrated one that actually is having a managed transfer of that function over to Donna's area, because obviously we want to make sure that it's effective, efficient, that it's integrated with your other work program, again, for cost efficiency reasons. And it needs to be sized and resourced appropriately. correctly. That's all provided for. So Donna's absolutely correct. At the moment, that still sits with GM Integrated Catchment Management. We felt that the end of the financial year is a good watershed moment for that transfer to be completed across to Donna's area, because you're absolutely right. The integration under the Board Resource Management function does make sense. But there's a bit of work to do.
Very good.
So if I was a member of the public ringing Environment Southland about hay bales in the riverbed, then I would presume that Environment Southland would have someone who would deal with it.
Well, there is a bylaw in place and we have to follow that up, don't we, and adhere to that.
Jeremy,
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One just in regards to gravel. And we're seeing these volumes. I'd just like to know, if we can, not today, but what is the total consented removal of gravel out of rivers of our catchments, which we've obviously got consented numbers. Morris and I have been doing some mathematics, or I've been doing the mathematics showing Morris. Just in regards to these volumes, they do look big volumes, but probably in the context of our river systems, they're maybe quite minor. But I'd like to see, if we can get those volumes, so just get an idea of what's coming out of the rivers.
one of the submitters gave us a number.
Oh, well, they've got their own, it's more of saying what's consented, what is allowed. And I don't think he said specifically, he didn't have the total, he was saying we do use a lot of gravel. Because there has been some good stats, like good information through that submission process. And that was just a question in regards to that. I've got a question around water tanks. And I'll declare I've got a water tank here, but it's nothing nasty. It's just more informative. Is that we have the permitted activity for 86,000 odd litres now from water tank. And I've discussed this with other dairy farmers. Some don't know that it's permitted activity. And I'm saying, have we reached out to the people that have those water tanks, that they have the option to actually disregard that consent now? They don't need a consent to take that water. Just teasing that out.
Just while Lacey takes her seat through you, Mr. Chair, I
Okay.
will come back to you about the gravel
Yep.
volumes.
Just, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the slight link with the rule itself, so Rule 54, you'll be referencing the groundwater take rule, is linked with Appendix L5 of our plan, which talks about the allocation of water. That particular appendix is caught up in the plan appeal that still exists with regard to the certain appeal. I believe it's the Wilkins appeal that still exists at the moment. So if you have a look in the plan, the Appendix L5 is under appeal. It is grey, and because it links through to the particular rule, it has we have not been cleared essentially by our policy and planning team to set that rule as fully operative.
Right.
We have though done work with Rule 49, so the permitted activity water take the surface water rule, which has a different volume, and we will be doing taking the same actions. So we have written to people to let them know that their surface water take is permitted and it is open to them too.
So I better watch what I asked now. Is that so? Actually, the rule hasn't been. It's not a permitted activity yet. Technically, I'm just.
There is a technicality.
It must have
there.
some.
Yeah, there is a technicality there through assessments and consent applications in particular. There is a weighting applied in a planning context around the scale of the water take and those other types of things. So yes, there is a technicality.
So sorry, I'm just down because this is actually quite interesting because it was in that waterland plan where the permitted activity. So I believe that we it was there. So nobody's non-compliant. Can we drop those consents now? Or that you wouldn't be allowed to them, they should hang on to the consent because technically it's not legally gone through. It's been appealed.
There are,
It's tied up. So that's the answer that I'm probably.
through you, Mr. Chair, we will seek to probably get an update from our planning team as to whereabouts the consent appeal is currently at.
Okay.
And be able to advise, but you are correct, technically, that may not be the way forward, and there are reasons why some consent holders may want to retain their consent.
Just quite good just to brief the consent holders and then everybody knows where it's at and what the future holds, so to speak. All good.
Thank you. Alistair.
Yeah, during their submissions, there's been several people bring up, and other farmers have come to us too, saying that, okay, we've had a change now with the consent, the compliance people do inspections on the gravel. And these farmers have been used to having people come from the back, catchment group, give them advice, and sort it all out. But that isn't now happening, and they're coming in and just looking at what's going on and going away and going back, and the farmer still gets charged. What is the process of educating your compliance team that are doing this sort of work, or you're not going to worry?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the role we play when we're out there is to monitor the consent and do the advice and education that we are scoped to be able to do. We aren't river specialists, and so there is a limit to the advice or education that we would give. What we would do is then bring that information back if a farmer has a specific question and ask our catchment operations team to contact them, or encourage that farmer to speak directly to that river person who knows that property to be able to get that high level technical advice.
I hope that's happening.
So anything that comes back to us, we're passing it through. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Lawrence, you had another question.
Well, it was really about Jeremy's request for the amount of gravel that's taken out of how many gravel consents there are, because some are on dry land, on farmers' paddocks, for example. Some are in backwaters on rivers where there's no active gravel transport going on. The gravel's been deposited there in the past and they're taking it out, but what's really important, what I was trying to get at before, is the amount of gravel that's taken out of the active river bed. Because the amount of gravel that's travelling down a river at a particular reach can be measured. It's not very easy to do it, but it can be measured. And so I think that information that Jeremy has asked for would be interesting, but unless we relate it to the amount of gravel that's actually available without causing problems to riverbeds, then it wouldn't be so useful. So that's what I was saying before. We've got to be sure that the amount of gravel that we give consent for isn't causing environmental harm.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the comment made. Obviously, we've got some further work to do in understanding at a macro level the gravel supply and gravel movement within each catchment. So we'll certainly take that back to the catchment operations team and see where that work is at, and come back to you with some further information.
Yeah, I acknowledge that some work has been done, like you mentioned before, in the Tara between Riversdale and Balfour or Adlassa, and that so that basically found that the gravel level was staying about the same or degrading a bit perhaps.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second
Councillor McLeod. Unless there's any further questions or commentary, motion, recommendation, for the recommendation, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Tony.
Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Donna. So the next one was 9.6 fast track approvals. Oh, sorry. No, the MOU with a target.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can possibly speak to that report. Mr. Cleaver, Harbour Master's on leave at the moment. He is unwell, I think, today. This is really just an advisory for the committee that the Harbour Master team is doing some, or the Maritime team, sorry, doing some positive work with Otago Regional Council and their Harbour Master function in terms of sort of pooling resources. Sort of links to the discussion that we had earlier in the meeting about maximising the collective value of the team. There's 3 people in our Maritime team or Harbour Master team covering a very large area, and it doesn't take too much in terms of leave or illness or whatever to put us in some serious risks for some really important things. And so Lyndon and his counterpart at Otago Regional Council have been working really closely together and looking towards framing up our MOU around resource sharing and support that can then come back in front of probably, I think the council will be appropriate because it's relating to resource sharing. So you're aware that work is happening. And again, it's about trying to make sure that the support is there between the 2 regions. And also you could have an event that transcends both regions. If you had a, say, large scale oil spill or something like that, it would be all hands to the pump in that instance, and having some agreement around who does what and where the relative jurisdictions sit is really important. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Just note this is a proposed memorandum of understanding with Otago. When it's finalised, I would expect it does to come back to council.
I move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Morris. Seconded by Nelson. Thank you. Moved and seconded that with the recommendation we receive the report. No further discussion or questions. I put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Now we're on to the Fast Track Approvals Act 2024. And there's a question to be answered here.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll take the report as read. Just give you a quick update on the Act itself. Hopefully the content of the report is reasonably self-explanatory around the process that's followed. But at a high level, any fast track approvals process, there's 2 pathways. One is you are a listed project, which they were listed at the start of the commencement of the Act, and there's 4 of those in the Southern region as outlined. Or alternatively, people can seek to be considered as fast track process, and there's 2 elements of that, where they lodge a referral application that's considered by the Minister of Infrastructure. If approved, that then goes into the substantive application process. So I've sort of attempted to outline the process there. A key element really where your feedback and consideration is requested is the level of governance input that you would like to have in terms of the inputs to these processes. I've mentioned that we've already had some fast track processes in the Southland, albeit under the previous legislation. We now have a new referral application by Climate Energy, which circulated a draft response to you over the last week, and I've had some feedback on that. We'll be looking to incorporate that and get that response back, which is due this Friday. But I've outlined in the report the different approaches that different regional councils are taking to elected representative inputs into the fast track process. Some of them are just effectively informing the councillors about where these processes are at. And that's understandable. If you go to the Auckland region, for example, who we spoke to a couple of weeks ago on this, they have 28 fast track projects. A lot of them are large scale residential developments, etc. They're all moving quite quickly, and therefore it's the wheels are in motion and the timeframes are very strict, and there's no extensions as far as the EPA is concerned. So they've got a number of processes happening that need to be completed quite quickly. In those instances, they're informing their elected representatives via regular reporting about where these processes are at. Alternative, and that's a similar sort of approach which Greater Wellington and others are taking. Otago Regional Council has nominated 2 of its councillors to an internal working group, which is made up of staff and those 2 councillors who work through the inputs into these processes, and then they're approved to be submitted to the EPA. So there's sort of 2 alternative approaches to that. As you're aware, to date, we've attempted to give the full council visibility around our responses on all of their fast track processes that we've experienced, and that's worked effectively, and we appreciate the feedback we've had. We've had really prompt feedback from the council. So the key question here really is how involved does the committee think the elected representatives should be or want to be? If councillors were appointed to a working group to work up a response or a comment back to the EPA. It's still feasible that another councillor could be appointed to the actual decision-making panel. And I've referred to an example here in the Central Otago district. They've got a large-scale mining project, and they've recently nominated one of their councillors to be part of the decision-making panel. And Environment Southland obviously don't have to do that, but could choose to do that at some future process. And it would be important to keep separation between the councillor that's nominated to be one of the decision makers from councillors who may be involved in the working party. So hopefully that's reasonably clear, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Hall.
I guess in the run up to the election, it may be difficult for councillors who are standing again to perhaps take part, whether the likes of myself and probably Neville, who aren't standing again, may be free to be able to do that. So in the meantime, I think it's going quite well, but when we get into that nomination time, there's probably some potential difficulties for other councils. I'm not sure if it's just oversight, but it would be certainly worth keeping in mind. And
sorry, Mr. Chairman, another thing I probably should have mentioned, to put this in a little bit of context, we're not envisaging a tsunami of these fast track applications, but we would expect that there's a reasonable possibility that at least one more will be lodged in the term of the current council.
So is this an internal appointment for Environment Southland's responses to applications?
Yes, what we do at the moment is we form a technical working group of the relevant staff, which is usually consents compliance or security biodiversity, sometimes someone from the science team and sometimes some of our other technical specialists, and they frame up a response, and it'll be an opportunity to sense check that with the elected representatives as to how that response lands from a elected representative perspective. So bring in a bit more of the community perspective, I guess, into sometimes what can be a reasonably technical type response.
Peter?
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a good suggestion. I'll go a wee bit further. Some of these fast track proposals can be a bit controversial. They're usually in the public eye quite strongly. Maybe as your councillors represent the whole of the region, you can pick and choose where those projects are to take place to get a bit of a local flavour of the feel of things too. That might be valuable, that input alongside the technical input that your teams provide too. So I think it's a good suggestion.
I'm just wondering if this has been put up for consideration, or whether it's a recommendation from staff that there should be two councillors appointed to the group.
Yes, just to clarify that, Mr. Chairman, I probably took it and put it up rather than making a recommendation that you should appoint two councillors. It was really testing your appetite about whether you think elected representatives should be involved or not. Noting Councillor McDonald's comment, really good suggestion. I think that maybe if you had a particular project in a particular location, you might logically have the local representative as one of those people. Where that gets a little bit tricky for us is just the timing involved, because we've got very little time to put these things together and get them away, and it would be logistically easier to have two known elected reps, the same ones every time, that we could liaise with and then incorporate them into the working group, if you understand what I'm saying.
Maybe one elected representative sit across it permanently and then just bring another one in, depending on where the area is. So some sort of continuity. That's a similarity.
Look, I think the current situation where it's staff put something together and it's circulated to us all, actually, and those who want to make comments do, I think that works quite well. I think it's just when we get into that tricky election time that might be more important. Because I wouldn't like to. Morris is very good at reading those, of cutting him out and he's standing again, saying we want to make the most use of our resources. Yeah.
Morris?
Well, yeah, no, I don't really understand how it would be a problem for those who are standing again. You're still a councillor up until you get re-elected or not. So I don't see how that would be a problem, but I might not be understanding what you're getting at, Mr. Chairman. I don't know. Obviously, I'd be keen to be one of those people, but other people might want to be as well. But we do have that opportunity at the moment to make a comment. And, I've been doing that, and no doubt others have as well. And I find that very convenient and hopefully useful. And well, no, that would be another alternative, just to continue with that.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Not necessarily, I'm happy with the input. I mean, some take more interest in this than others. I think it's quite good that everybody can have a wee bit of a say. If there was to, you know, I was even thinking from a the chair of this committee, and whether it's chair, I'd be happy with those sort of things if you needed to, from a leadership side of things. But I've just got a question, and I'll just to clarify, I was just looking appropriate liaisons with Mana Whenua. In regards to consensus, Te ao Marama and Hokanui separate. And that they want to have a different. I just want to clarify, it's obviously here, so.
So something specifically in the industry, we normally liaise with Whakanui in the first instance. The ones we've had to date have been liaison with Te ao Marama, and what we've been doing there early in the process is to try to seek to create that alignment where appropriate. There could be instances, I guess, where it's not appropriate, but so far there's been some good collaborative dialogue, and generally the agencies have been aligned in their thinking about particular projects that we've had. But we would decide which one was appropriate depending on where the project is. The ones that we've had to date have been pretty clearly in the Te ao Marama's jurisdiction.
So sorry, Linda, yes, you may speak.
Thank you. Just also, I think having governance input into those discussions is really important. And raising the issue of whether that councillor would or wouldn't have their making good decisions qualification, and whether you're better to keep those ones out of that conversation so that they're available for possible hearings as the Otago example, or not. I'm asking the question because I don't know what would be best, but you wouldn't want to compromise maybe the only one or two councillors that have got those qualifications in the incoming council by rolling them out at the beginning. I don't know.
So
Just a question.
we're presented with an opportunity to arrange for two councillors to take part in these discussions. The question is, do we really need to, considering the process that we've been following up till now, where those applications are coming before pretty much the full council? So are we happy with that, or do we want further input? That's what we need to decide.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, from a practical perspective, we can continue to manage with the status quo, and I really appreciate everybody's got that really promptly, or if they've been comfortable, they haven't got back. So there's not necessarily a problem that we need to fix with the current process. I guess where it could get interesting potentially in the future could be if you had a proposal where the council was split about the pros and cons of it, and that was where it might get a little bit more difficult to manage around the current process. But I guess if that's the case, then we'd probably want to bring that forward to the full council table for some full dialogue in here. So we, in a nutshell, to summarise that waffle, we could continue with the current status quo if that's where you prefer. So.
Yes, I really, from a democratic point of view, I think just having a couple of people appointed from this committee, it could be a little bit exclusive, and that other councillors will not be given the same opportunity. So I think the current system, works well for me anyway. But that might take on. I prefer to just keep with the current situation.
Middle.
Well, I'll suggest we stick with the status quo, but if a situation arises that governments have to make a different decision, we do that at the time. So that probably means a bit of a change to the recommendations there. We can still receive the report, give feedback. At this stage, we're probably not doing the two.
I think we can just change the committee recommends that the status quo be retained with respect to circulation of draft comments for councillor feedback for the current chair of the council.
So I have the mood that we are happy with the current situation, the consultation which is taking place, and the opportunities which we are given to provide feedback. So in that case, then, as Chairman Horrell points out, we could receive the report and provide the feedback that we don't believe that it's necessary to appoint councillors to that at the moment. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to move
Okay.
that, Mr.
Would
Chair.
that be your recommendation?
Yes, I'm happy to move that recommendation if we're,
Okay.
sounds like we're clear on what it is now. So
We're seconding, anyone second to that? Thank you, Morris. Any further discussion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's another matter that the Chief Executive asked if I could traverse with you this afternoon. I circulated that response on the contact referral application, and thanks for the feedback that I had on that. It said that we were not opposed to the use of the fast track process for consideration of the application. The Chief Executive asked me to test with the committee whether he thought not opposed was appropriate or we should be supporting the use of the fast track process. The reason why I had not opposed in it in the first instance was there was some strong community concern about the use of the fast track process. So that was the reason why that wording was chosen, but I just want to test your comfort level with using not opposed as opposed to support.
I'd go with not opposed.
I think not opposed would be mine.
Okay, thank you.
So the recommendations here have been, number 1 and number 2 have been described. 1 is receiving the report. 2nd is no, we don't need to appoint anybody. Anybody in favour of that? Anyone against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I think that's about it, isn't it? There's no extraordinary and urgent business and no public excluded business. So I will declare the meeting is concluded and thank you for your input and participation.
I don't want me to go eat here somewhere.
She got me,